flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
The Vikings now are ready to elevate the bar. And look, they've got great stadium, great practice facility, state-of-the-art. The Wilfs will spend money on players. You just need to have the right players. And I was stunned that Rick Spielman was fired after 16 years with the team, but it's what happens when you hitch your wagon to Kirk Cousins. Frankly, sorry, but I think that's what brought him down, because I think the final analysis is we blew it on this one. We paid this guy way too much money, and even though he throws for a lot of yards and touchdowns, there's a ceiling on what he can do,
right?
And that reinforced the ceiling on what the Vikings can do.
Oh, okay, Florio. You don't like 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, guy.
Did he just steal our whole show?
Yeah. I think Mike Florio and Mark Wilf have been consuming a lot of Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily.
Why is our show being cannibalized by Mark Wilf and PFF?
I'm fine with that. You seem offended by it. I'm honored by it.
No, yeah. It just sounded like it sounded like we send out talking points now.
We should send out like a morning press release of talking points.
Hey, if you need something to discuss today on your national show regarding the Vikings, here you go. Yeah,
mine would be the same every day. It would just be ripping Kirk Cousins. It's like the only thing.
So negative. Not me.
So, this is Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, therapy, speculation, and we'll get to Write That Down predictions. We are going to crown a Write That Down champion on today's show, so stay tuned for that. This is going to be. Let's spend some time here. Just There's a few different things and questions, things to clean up from our Vikings discussions over the past couple days.
Yep.
Judd looks like he's preemptively. I wouldn't get you never know and write that down. Okay?
No, I've got my
You're
bat.
Celebrating right now.
I'm not celebrating. I've got my bat here. I'm just prepared for the day.
Just it's Mackey and Judd's like WWE. Anything can happen at any given time.
Believe me. People will cheat.
We're going to restart this match.
I heard so this morning I was watching Get Up with our guy Greeny, who also, when he steals from the show, he at least asks permission and collaborates with us.
Yes.
And they had some guy, what's the best opening, and the Vikings didn't get brought up that much. This is our buddy Jay Will on the Keyshawn, Jay Will, and Zubin show. I'll let Dex hit this, talking about what the best coaching and or GM openings are.
I go to Minnesota, guys. Mm-hmm. And I know there's cap restrictions there, obviously, with some challenges around Kirk, but you got talented roster, man. You think about Dalvin Cook, between Justin Jefferson, between Thielen, the way they play, their defense is solid, and you have patient ownership. So Kirk Cousins is not like he's a horrible quarterback. I know you guys aren't on him.
No, he's solid.
And he's not $35 million with the quarterback, but you can sign him to an extension to kind of relieve that if you are going to keep him.
So let's be as objective as we possibly can be here, which I think we try to be on Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily. From a GM and or coaching perspective, you got like 7 coach openings now that Joe Judge got canned, and you got a small handful of GM openings. How appealing are these jobs relative to the rest of the openings?
Well, I think the coaching job, it remains to be seen, because we probably have to see who gets the GM job. But I think the GM job is extremely attractive. There are only 3 of those: the Bears, the Giants, the Vikings. The Vikings have, this is what I don't get. The Vikings have some immediate issues that need to be addressed, but the GM's not going to be hired for the 2022 season and then fired, hopefully. The Vikings' problems are all things that can be rectified. In fact, the Vikings' problems are all things that can be corrected, or are supposed to be corrected, if I'm not mistaken. They are correct. They are corrected by the new GM. The Giants have become a laughingstock, unfortunately. They are now in a cycle of firing their new coach every 2 years. They are left with supposedly a franchise quarterback in Danny Dimes, who I don't think is. And so, like that, which is fine. But my point is the Giants haven't been well run now in a while. And there are some, I think, very big internal issues to fix. Bears, same thing. They have retained Bill Polian, God bless him, he's 79, to help with their coaching search. And the Bears owner, George McCaskey, came out at the press conference and was awful. I mean, the press conference was it was just terrible. And basically said,
very deflating if you were a Bears fan.
And basically said,
Idiot.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan just like you. Okay, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear I've got answers, or I know what
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I am competent, which is not what McCaskey said. The Vikings have salary cap problems. Okay, exactly. They can be fixed. The Vikings have a quarterback problem, but the exciting thing with a quarterback, especially the Cousins thing, is the opportunity to move on and find one. Like the Daniel Jones thing to me is more depressing because that's a draft pick that didn't work. I'm far more deflated by Christian Ponder than Kirk. Like Kirk was brought in as essentially a football assassin, and it didn't work. But Daniel Jones was drafted to help your franchise, and that did not work. But long term, I'll ask you guys this question. When you look at the Vikings and this job from the GM's chair, long term, what do you see that's like a huge red flag where you're like, oh boy, the work here is going to be very difficult?
Yeah, well, I think this is a great job for a GM or a coach. I'll start by saying that. If I'm just looking at immediately, like in the next year or so, it is a little murky. I don't think Kirk is an asset. Like I don't a 33-year-old decent but not great quarterback that puts up these hollow statistics and ultimately has put a glass ceiling on every team he's ever played for going back to Washington. Like some people say, well, look at the yardage he puts up and look at this and that. And if you just smooth that contract out and extend him, it's like I have no interest in locking into 3 more years, even at a slightly reduced price, to the 12th best quarterback in the NFL. And I actually think he might be lower than that because I would put Derek Carr above him. I would put Jimmy Garoppolo above him, quite frankly, even though Jimmy doesn't put up the same numbers. There's a certain leadership and winning DNA there. So in the immediate short term, somebody might look at this and say, ooh, 4th worst cap situation, and you got to figure out quarterback. At least the Jaguars, unless Trevor Lawrence turns into one of the biggest busts ever, like they got quarterback figured out. The Bears might have quarterback figured out if you believe in Justin Fields. But if you sort of zoom out from maybe a 1-year outlook to what you're saying, Judd, which is let's go big picture here. Let's look at 5 years. Let's look at 10 years. Great ownership, great stadium, super passionate fans that add value to, I think to winning games on Sunday with the crowd noise, great facilities, all these things. And if you look out to 2023, they go from being in cap hell this year. And if they want to get out of it, it's very easy to get out of it by 2023. In fact, right now, even with Harrison Smith and Adam Thielen and Eric Kendricks, all guys who are over 30, even with those guys on the roster in 2023, they still have $75 million in cap space 2 seasons from now. So if you're confident and you think you can find that young quarterback, draft, trade, whatever it may be,
yes,
and you're comfortable moving on from some really good but aging players, you can get this thing back on track really, really quickly, but you got to figure out quarterback long term. And so that's the
right.
one thing that would make me like, boy, would I rather just hitch my wagon to Trevor Lawrence and figure out the rest of it, dumpster fire organization, or would I take the better infrastructure and trust myself to find that quarterback?
Dex?
I think infrastructure-wise, the Vikings do have a legitimate situation. Their stadium's nice. Their fan base is rabid. It's a let's call it what it is, one of the most successful franchises to not have won a Super Bowl ever. But I think when you look at just the defensive side of the ball, like outside of Danielle Hunter, who I guess isn't necessarily a shoo-in, if you wanted to trade him, you could. There's really not a lot of pieces there. Like you're going to have to basically build up that entire defense. And that takes time. Like Mike Zimmer came in here and installed things after Leslie Frazier left, after it being a dumpster fire. But it took, 3 years for it to reach its peak of being a number 1 defense. It was a good defense in 2015, and then it was still good in 16, but then it popped in 2017. It took 3 years to do that. Now, with the way the NFL is trending, I'm not saying you have to put all the resources in the defensive side of the ball. You just have to be strategic and hit some home runs in the draft. But from the defensive side of the ball, it's an uphill battle from a GM side to get this defense, I think, to just be passable. I really do think so.
And that's all the more reason to get young and cheap at quarterback too, because you're gonna need cap space, because you're not gonna fix the whole thing in the draft. You don't have enough picks, and you're gonna whiff on some guys, and some guys are gonna be fourth rounders that need development. So you're going to need all the cap space you can get in 2023, and you're probably going to need to draft some defensive players in the first round. If you can make tough decisions and potentially trade some of these veteran players for second, third, like if you thought you could trade Eric Kendricks for a third-round pick or second-round pick, I know fans are going to hear that, and they're going to be like, what?
Right.
Kendricks had the worst season of his career, according to Pro Football Focus, and he's over the age of he's 30, right? He's 30 years old.
Yeah, and see, to me, though, what Dex is talking about, if I'm a candidate, excites me to no end. I can rebuild. I mean, Mike, the Vikings in Frazier's last year defensively, unfortunately, were a complete joke. 14, Mike started to change things. By 15, you're a missed field goal in a playoff game away from going to the second round. And so I think the problem that we have is we fixate on what's been done previously and the players who are here. And so we say, well, you got these great players or some great players, but you're sort of stuck in cap hell. Well, actually, you're really not, because those great players that you love are nobody in some cases to the new GM. And he's going to say, Harrison Smith, it's been great. You're awesome. You are in 5 years, come back here and we are going to put your name up in the rafters or on our ring of honor. But the reality is you're gone. And now fans are like, but Harrison Smith's so good, but you're not that good. And that's the problem. And so we've got this weird fixation to you're in cap hell and you're stuck with these players. This is a National Football League. You're not stuck. It might cost you a bit, but I mean, you can get this team completely different with new players that guess what? Fans will like and buy their jerseys in a couple of years. What I'm saying is with the Bears and Giants, those right now, and I don't think it's debatable, are dysfunctional franchises and have been. And I don't think they're well run. And they've made a lot of bad choices. The Vikings just got done. Now, the Vikings, I think the last couple of years were becoming dysfunctional, but they just got done with a GM who had been with the organization in some capacity for 16 years. Mm-hmm. Zimmer had been here since 14. So there was stability here. There was a lot. I just think everything that the Vikings are facing that's a real problem is an immediate problem, which if I'm a GM candidate, I love that. I can address that. And I don't care if, you can't cut Suter and Parisi. You can't buy them out. Actually, I can. See you later. Yeah. Now, am I creating problems? Most definitely. But I feel that I can handle those problems. So anyway, I think that people think the Vikings are somehow stuck. They're not stuck because they're not wedded to the players that you think that they are, and that's one big reason why Rick and Mike are gone.
Let me paint a scenario. Let's call it Mission 2023 or whatever. Let's take a step back.
Hold on, I'm going to text Mark Wilf right now.
Please do.
Talking point.
Let's take a step back from this obsession that you need to mission with a capital. Maybe it's all caps. Mission.
Okay, you tell me. Okay. What's the message?
Let's stop with this obsession that you have to claw and dig every year and milk your way to 8 wins or 9 wins. You're probably going to have to take a step back roster-wise if you really truly want to win a Super Bowl and be a true contender at some point. You got to flush out the cap situation. So, 2023, if you say goodbye to Kirk before then, if you say goodbye to Harrison Smith, who's going to be in his mid-30s by then, if you say goodbye to Eric Kendricks, who's going to be 32 years old by then, and maybe you get a draft pick for him, you will have, and by the way, this also includes Daniil Hunter being gone, so you're definitely going to have to find
Thielen?
I've got Thielen still. This is including Thielen on an $18 million cap hit.
And I'm cutting him. He's gone.
So let's take that off the books too.
Yeah. Let's cut him as well.
Okay. So if
Fans
you
are
do
now
those
like,
things,
what are you guys doing?
now again, like we just took away a bunch of Ring of Honor players and maybe a couple Hall of Famers in there that you're going to have to replace. But you would have $113 million in cap space. The top team right now going into this offseason, 2022 offseason, has $75 million in cap space. So and now you're going to sign some players and there's going to be some extensions. So you're not going to have that much. But I'm just saying, like, as it projects right now, you'd have $113 million in cap space. And let's call it probably settles into like 75 or 80 by the time maybe Justin Jefferson gets an extension. I don't know, whatever. Right. Or you sign a couple free agents to fix your offensive line this year.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying is you'd have among the most cap space of any team in the NFL. And if you feel like at any point in the 2022 or 2023 draft, preferably first or second round, that there is a quarterback of the future in there, and you have a great leader and offensive-minded guy at head coach, you can see how this thing could get back to popping pretty quickly by 2023. So that's a fun scenario to think about, isn't it? Like, free yourself and detach yourself from this mediocrity and this struggle to get to 500. Like, who cares what happens in 2022? It'll be fun regardless. There'll be fun things to watch, especially if they're playing a rookie quarterback or something. Like, there's going to be fun things to watch. But the more I look at this, they are. And by the way, in 2023, guess who's probably not in your division anymore? Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. The Packers are probably trying to figure out their quarterback future, and they're probably coming back down the other side of the mountain. You know, maybe the Bears have it cleaned up by then. I'm never going to bet on the Lions having it cleaned up.
Yeah, and I don't know about the Bears either.
It's like there's so much light here, but it's a little dim in 2022, but there's so much light for 2023.
And my question again to the fan base is, what's the sticking point here? Like, what's the concern? And I think people look at, I think the problem is this discussion is had in a vacuum of what immediately can you do? And that's not sports.
And the answer might be, based on the way the chessboard is set up, there is no way to win this game.
The Zolgad answer to the question is this: you might be bad. Oh no, a year of being bad. What does that get me? Let's see here. Oh, a draft pick. So like, there's no. This is a exciting reset opportunity. This is not the problem is the national people look at these jobs and they're like, well, Justin Fields might be good and the Bears might be good in 22. Okay, they might be. And if they are, good for them. But the Vikings have, and this show is as far away from being a homer show as you can possibly get. But the Vikings have a ton of problems that can be cleaned up, I think, fairly quickly.
Tough decisions.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why you do this. Bill Guerin, right? Bill Guerin has made some very tough calls. Mm-hmm. And he might be wrong. I don't know. But I like the fact he's taking swings.
But do you think so? Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a new GM here, and a new GM comes in and says, "Yeah, guys, 2023 is the year, and we can be damn competitive in 2023, and it opens a window for like 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. But 2022 is going to have to be about some tough decisions. And hopefully we don't go 3-14, but we need to set ourselves up for a big offseason of cap space, youth movement in 2023, like good young players.
Yes.
And for that to happen, Wilves, me as the new GM, I have to make some tough decisions. I think we should trade 2 or 3 players that are maybe Ring of Honor guys while they still have value. I think we can probably get a decent draft pick for the current version of Eric Kendricks, who's not going to be helping us much in 2023. Right. Harrison Smith, who's not going to be helping us much in 2023. And Adam Thielen. If other teams see value, other teams that are further along in the winning cycle see value in those players, it would give you even like 2nd, 3rd round picks that you can use to package together to move up for a quarterback in the draft in 2023, right? Would the Wilfs look at that and say, we need to stay competitive? I know we said Super Bowls and contenders, all that stuff, but we're not going to go into a rebuild. Because Mark Wilf specifically said it's not a rebuild. It's a retooling, and we think we can be very competitive. But if a new GM comes in and says, I mean, it's not like a 5-year rebuild, but it's definitely like a 2022 rebuild to be better in 2023. Would ownership balk at that?
Well, first of all, I think that when you come in to talk to the Wilfs to talk about this job, that should be on your topic sheet. So like you shouldn't get the job and then go, okay, I got these ideas. I think that you need to present them with the ideas immediately of this is where I see, I've done my due diligence on your franchise and this is where I see things. The other thing is we need to see sports. So sports are the same, Phil, I think in some ways, but they're not in other ways. And this is a conversation. Football's a different thing in the sense that yes, rebuilds and retools are not 5 years. They're not 4 years. But the reality is hitting the reset button on Thielen and Kendricks and Smith, Hunter possibly, to me, far more speaks of trying to win as soon as possible. Not so like if you keep them, they're football players. They're aging out quickly. I mean, Hunter, God bless him, he's phenomenal when healthy. But that's the key word. He's not to 30, right? He's not even 30
I think
yet.
he's like 27.
Right. But I mean, he has now had back-to-back years of being hurt. That's a toll. That's a problem. That's becoming a movable player. And so I think the discussion is this. I think the discussion is, do you want to get good again quick? And clearly, if you own the team, you're going to say, absolutely, I do. The answer then is, then we have to move guys out, not keep guys.
Yep. And I think the other question I would ask is, because the Wilfs are going to want to know, let's start with how good can we be as quickly as possible? How good can we be in 2022? Do you think, because there's a lot of fans out there that would say, hey, if you get a couple guys back healthy, if Daniil comes back healthy, you restructure Kirk's contract to free up a little free agency money, maybe you can get one free agent in here. Run this back again with a different and better offensive-minded head coach. Is this an 8-win team that's really an 11-win team if you make a couple tweaks? I think the answer is no, because especially on defense, like these players aren't going back in time. And Adam Thielen's not going back in time. Like Harrison Smith's best days are almost certainly behind him. Dalvin Cook's best days might be behind him. I know it's hard to say this stuff, but here's my question to you guys. How good can they get in 2022 if that was the edict? Hey, we're not taking a step back here, so make it work.
Okay. The answer to that question is going to sound weird at first, but it makes perfect sense. If you are prepared, if you come in having done your background check on this team and you're asked that question that you just asked by the Wilfs, the answer is this. We can be a competitive, potentially playoff team in 22 if I start to make changes as soon as possible. Adam Thielen, this is going to sound really harsh, but hear me out. Adam Thielen gets in the way of a Super Bowl championship because KJ Osborne looks good. Jefferson is marvelous. Going to tell you right now, Amir Smith-Marset on Sunday, there's something there. 22 should be all about it should be a step towards a couple of things. One, the future and getting playing time for guys who need to play. And the more that you're behind Harrison Smith and Thielen and Kendricks, the less you're going to play. And the other thing is it should be about being able to get these young players to a position where they're contributing and on a team. Do
you think, because I disagree on Thielen, because I think he's still, obviously he's been banged up, but I think he's still an excellent player.
He is.
I don't love that he's the third highest cap hit on the team.
I think he's a great player on a team that can pop. I would love for him to go get a championship. Not here. But
he's probably going to play for 5 more years. And so if it was a lower price tag, well, if he was willing to renegotiate,
you know what?
He's going to be 32
I'm going to tell you this right now. He's getting hurt. Guys, once you start to you are the proverbial car that has been driven off the lot. And now you've been scratched. You've been hit a couple times. Car's dinged up. I don't like your resale value goes down by the year. That's where going. And the other thing is, I want to galvanize the players that I see as the core of this team for 23 into a team. A lot of young players in 21 got a very bad example of what a team is. I need to change that. So like I am going to approach this from getting positive experiences and experience for young players who are going to contribute. But I also want them to see in the locker room what a team is, because I can tell you flat out, without having set foot in that room once, that was not a team that we saw.
And I think you and I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on Thielen, in that the reason I don't put him in the exact same bin as Kendricks and Harrison Smith is like Harrison Smith might wind up playing another 5 years too at that position, but
Absolutely.
They have Cam Bynum. He looks like he deserves full-time playing time, and I just think at some point you're going to need to rack up some draft pick assets if you really want to have ammunition.
I think Osborne's really good. I think
agree.
KJ is really good.
But what I would say about Thielen is I actually think he could play sort of a Larry Fitzgerald role, in that he's just around. He was around when the Cardinals started to come back up on the upswing with Kyler Murray and whatnot. I don't think he's like a detriment to the locker room in the way that Ryan Suter was in the Wilds room. I think Thielen is a good leader behind the scenes. I think if you're trying to justify paying a 32-year-old mostly injured wide receiver $16 or $17 million to the cap, that's a problem. But if he was willing to help the team out a little bit and take a little bit less money, because he's no longer one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but he's reliable as a red zone target, and when he plays, he's still valuable. Like, I want him on the team in 2023 is what I'm saying, if we can make the financials work.
I don't care about him. He's gone.
Okay. Dex?
I just don't care.
By 2023, I don't think you can say I want him on the team by then. I at that point he's older. Like I just don't think you can say he should be on the team by then.
And if that's the case,
there's a wall that's gonna.
If that's the case, then you should trade him now, like not now, but like in a month.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm with you.
Unless it's all about 2022. But if you want to win big in 2023, 24, 25, then if that's the case, then if you guys, I mean, and I disagree, but then you should trade Adam Thielen in like a month.
Yep. Don't you think that Mark Welf? So I liked the message and the statement. Don't you guys think though that the 2022 super competitive potential championship line was just a talking point that I feel like is in every presser of a team that does not absolutely stink? Like I don't think the Wilfs are really going to sit down with these GM candidates and be wed to that. I just think it's an important part of the message, because what are they going to say?
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to be super competitive next year, so don't check out.
I think I do believe that they want to win championships, and that's why they fired a good coach and a good, not great coach, good, not great general manager. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. Like, you can't come out and say, this is a full rebuild, fans, so nothing to see here until 2023. But they better operate that way if that's what. And again, it's not even an if. Like they're not going to win a Super Bowl in 2022 as currently constructed, and there's not enough cap space to drastically make this team better. So unless there's like first round pick and a miracle worker coach that can take a mediocre team and automatically bring them to the top of the heap, like you should aim for 2023. So I agree. Like the Wilfs have an obligation to keep fans excited, but also make prudent moves for the future.
I personally would advise owners not to use that line. I don't think it's necessary. Like, I love the we're pursuing championships line. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about, we could be really good in 22, or when Leopold said, we're retooling. We're not going to, it's like, no, you're really not just retooling. I don't think that's necessary. I don't need to hear that. Like, I like the fact that you're making changes that you think just flat out are going to make your franchise better.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. It is a good job.
Who internally, because fans are fans, and that's awesome. But who internally would say, oh man, this job sort of sucks for 22, so I'm out. Like, you would never look at it that way.
No. And this is, I think with some organizations that have a quicker trigger, like the Giants, if I'm taking a job with the Giants, I'm going to want to know based on how much they've just rotated through coaches the last few years. Do I have 3 to 5 years here? Or, what's the deal?
Yep.
The Wilfs are so patient. And I don't think overnight they're just going to, put the pressure on you if you don't win enough games in year one. I mean, 2022 should really be a free pass year to reset the roster, figure out who your quarterback is, and that might take until 2023. But if you want more of this type of fodder, Purple Daily has been on fire the last couple weeks. Realistic Randy last night. Alex Boone with sort of a behind-the-curtain look at the Mike Zimmer culture and some of his assessment there yesterday, so check that out. But we have a Write That Down champion to crown next on Mackey and Judd.